It's another Thunder Thursday from the Oklahoman studios here on 100 West Main. I'm with our Thunder coverage team, Darnell Mayberry, our guru of all things digital, Eric Horn, Thunder beat writer here in studio, and on the road joining us via Google Hangout, that would be Anthony Slater. He is in, I don't know, are you in Oakland, AC? Where are you?
Oakland. I'm actually pretty close to the arena.
All right, all the many spots in the Bay Area you could be staying. Wasn't sure where you were, but we'll be talking about the game that Anthony will be covering tonight a little bit later in the Hangout. But guys, obviously lots of news from yesterday that we still need to dissect and digest, and we've got to start obviously with the sad news of Aubrey McClendon's passing, 56, died in a single car crash yesterday morning. And Darnell, you've covered this team longer than anybody else in our market. You've been there since day one. You know the NBA's history here. Put into context for us Aubrey McClendon's role in the Thunder being here, being what they are now.
Well, he was a minority owner. Clay Bennett sort of got all the credit, all the acclaim for bringing the team here, but without guys like Aubrey McClendon, the Thunder wouldn't be here. The NBA would not be here. So you'd have to go back to the Hornets days when he was with Chesapeake. They really did a great job of putting up money to support the Hornets and their transition after Katrina hit in the Gulf South. And he just did so many things financially, even behind the scenes that people don't know about that really helped the NBA feel like it could work here in Oklahoma City when it wasn't even on the radar for the league office. And I think that's going to be his biggest contribution to the NBA being here successfully.
Well, as you wrote today, you know, he put up money for the NBA really before there was any promise of, you know, the NBA being here long term, or he just believed that it could work, and he made it known financially, which was, I mean, it was his support, but it was also, you got to have those dollars, and he was one of the first to say, yes, I'm in.
Chesapeake, when Aubrey McClendon was at Chesapeake, they put up, I believe it was $1.5 million. They were one of 5 pioneer partners, the Hornets called them. Things like that, the naming rights on the building, it's named after his former company, Chesapeake Energy. They paid, I believe it was $12 million or $3 million a year for a 12-year deal with 3% increases, annual increases. So, I mean, financially, he went above and beyond when he didn't have to continue to support this. And I think the biggest thing for him, for his family, was the civic pride that came along with what they were doing, to show this is a great place to live. We can do a lot of things here in Oklahoma City. Everyone that I spoke with yesterday talked about how Aubrey McClendon was a visionary. He was a big dreamer. He loved this place. He loved trying to do things for his community, and I think that's what we saw, and it just happened to spill over into the NBA.
You know, Eric, we all had a chance to talk to different people about Aubrey yesterday, and you know, you talk about the bringing of the NBA, but there was no bigger fan. I mean, you saw it, we all saw it. He was there every game. He wasn't in the office, he wasn't in Clay Bennett's role, but there was no more active supporter of the Thunder than Aubrey McClendon.
Yeah, he was one of the staples, one of the people that was always at the games in that customary courtside seat that was kind of under the basket, close to the Thunder's bench. And I mean, as Darnell said, a guy who meant a lot to the city of Oklahoma City, and somebody who provided a lot and inspired a lot of people through Chesapeake and other companies to reach out and be a part of the community and to enhance the community. And he did so with the Thunder and the Boathouse District and a lot of other civic engagements that he was into.
I felt like I had a chance to talk to Tom Price, who was a former senior vice president at Chesapeake, and I felt like in talking to him, and we sort of talked about this for a second, the Thunder games almost became, I think, Aubrey's chance to celebrate what his city had become. You know, he obviously did it, as you mentioned, Eric, in a lot of different ways, but to be there on that court, 18,000 around him for every game, an NBA team in his city, I think it was sort of his chance to, on a regular basis, celebrate how great a place his hometown had become. It was really, really cool to see.
One more thing I'll add, Jenny, is that when the Hornets got here, they reached out to Chesapeake and tried to get their community outreach list. So they went and to see the schools that they went into, the communities that they went into, and the Hornets basically patterned their community outreach after Chesapeake's, which was led of course, by Aubrey McClendon at the time. And so everything that the Hornets did when they started going into schools and they took Chris Paul and David West into these different communities, they were using the template that Chesapeake had created under Aubrey McClendon. And now what you're seeing with the Thunder, the book bus, all these reading programs and everything that the players are doing, that's all an offshoot of what Chesapeake originally did. The Hornets got from Chesapeake, and the Thunder has now taken it from the Hornets.
Yeah, great point, Darnell. And obviously this franchise has connected, much like the Hornets did with this community, much like Chesapeake did with this community. So it makes a ton of sense that there would be some connection there. Anthony, let's bring you in because you were with the team yesterday after news broke. They obviously played a game in LA. We'll get to the on-court ramifications here in a while, but you had a chance to hear from Sam Presti, to hear from players. Just so happened you were covering a game involving a team with two former players here that were fairly high profile, and Chris Paul, Jeff Green. You had a chance to talk to those guys as well. Give us a sense of what you heard from those folks as you talked to them about Aubrey McClendon.
I think Jeff Green was really good on talking about, remember, this is a team that had all these young guys from Seattle that came to Oklahoma City, a place they didn't know, and Jeff Green said Aubrey McClendon was very good at, showing them, hey, here's where you should go to eat. Here's the place you should live. He just kind of took them through the city, toured them, and he was close to those players. I think over the years, his role around the team has kind of declined a little bit. I don't think he was super close to a lot of the younger guys on this current team, and his interactions weren't, everyday. It weren't even close to an everyday basis like a Clay Bennett. So, I don't think this hit as hard as directly as like a Monty Williams' wife did recently, but it's definitely, it was something that kind of, again, for the second time in a few weeks, kind of put life and basketball into perspective for them right before a big game. And, I think it was a somber-ish locker room pregame. But I think it's bigger to the city as a whole than maybe directly to the players.
Yeah, and I think what you said, Anthony, is echoed by, what we know and what we've heard is that, Clay Bennett, obviously that front man for the Thunder, but as a minority owner, guys, Aubrey McClendon might have been a silent partner, but he was very much a vocal supporter, again, being courtside and all of what we saw during games. Nobody was more consistent in their attendance for Thunder games than Aubrey McClendon. Let's spend just a second. I'll remind people, by the way, you're listening and watching Thunder Thursday, our weekly hangout, talking about all things Thunder. We're talking about the impact of Aubrey McClendon. And guys, we'd be remiss if we didn't look ahead just a little bit as we wonder what's next with the ownership group. Aubrey McClendon owning what we understand to be about 20% of this team. No one person owns a majority share of this team. That's the way the ownership group was structured. Darnell, it's much like the Spurs, where obviously it's been well chronicled that Clay Bennett has his NBA roots. No one person owns a big chunk of this team enough to control it. Is this part of the reason why? So you've got that stability through potential situations like
that's
this.
The key word, stability. That's what every ownership group wants, strives for, and they're local. Sam Presti stressed it in today's paper that the fact that it's local ownership is really significant, especially for Oklahoma City. We're one of the smallest markets in the league, and to have that group that has the civic pride to want to keep the team here through thick and thin, that's significant. But also the fact that they've got a diverse group. They've got people from banking, people from the oil and natural gas industries, people from the car dealership industries. So they've got a wide-ranging group. So it's not just that they're relying on one industry to support this team. They've got some heavy, deep-pocketed owners that can really support this team, and I think that's key.
Well, and Eric, to our knowledge, we don't know what the McClendon family will decide to do with their ownership. This is obviously something that is way down the list of priorities for them at this point. But even if they do decide to sell, and even if they sold to an outside entity, you're still talking about a vast majority of this franchise being owned by local ownership. And everything we've heard is that the business is good. So there's not sort of a lot of concern, at least from what we're being told and what we're hearing. And I think what we deduct, that this is going to somehow toss everything into upheaval.
Yeah, it would be a minority stake, and I mean, this isn't a situation like a Prokhorov where your owners are somewhere off in another country and they're kind of hanging over the team and they're not there every day. I mean, you've got Clay Bennett who's there frequently. You've got ownership in based out of Tulsa. You've got guys that are invested, like you said, that are from here. So, I mean, the part that is there from the McClendon family, if they do decide to sell, is still a minority piece. And I think that Thunder fans should kind of be put at ease in a sense from that regard, that it's not going to be a majority owner that would take over if the McClendon family were to sell.
Well, and Anthony, I think that, you know, the question that has to be on at least some fans' minds is, you know, this is obviously a tough stretch financially for Oklahoma with oil and gas industry going down. We see a lot of layoffs around the city and the state, and then obviously everyone knows the summer that's coming up with Kevin Durant's contract coming up, and I think fans may be wondering, does this have any impact on any of that? And there's not really a sense that it does, Anthony, as far as just, again, I go back to that word stability. I guess that that's sort of the bottom line. Even though things would seem like they're a little bit up in the air, it doesn't seem like the Thunder brass is feeling that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Kevin Durant's going to get to the negotiation table and they're going to be like, you know, we want to sign you, but you know, the money right now is too tight. You know, because, I mean, think about how much money Kevin Durant makes for this franchise. I mean, that would just, regardless of the money you have to give him, that would be a bad business move to let him go. So, I mean, everything's lined up. This team is going to try to continue to re-sign its star players over the next 2 years. Now, do they stay or go? Who knows at this point? But, you know, it doesn't really have anything to do with the ownership group at this point.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. I was thinking this morning, guys, you know, we talked about the Spurs being the model for the Thunder and the way the ownership group set up. Let's remember that when Clay Bennett was involved with the Spurs ownership under the Gaylord family, that was ownership from here. I mean, that was essentially out-of-town ownership, and as we well know, the Spurs are still very much a powerhouse in this league. So whether ownership is local or maybe spread a little bit beyond that, you've still got, with the structure the way it is, it's set up to maintain long-term, to be stable long-term, and I think we're going to see evidence of that moving forward.
Well, I think ownership, as we've seen, is like incredibly crucial to an NBA team's success. Just look at what's going on in Sacramento right now.
Right.
But I just think having Clay Bennett here as the majority guy, like, you know, I just don't think the loss of Aubrey McClendon, while it's, you know, it's really damning to the city and, you know, it's a tough time, I don't think it shakes anything up.
Yeah,
Thunder-wise.
We'll obviously be watching in coming days as it relates to this, but I think at this point, yeah, I think Anthony brings up a good point. It's more sort of a hit to the city's psyche and the loss of such a great champion of this city. That, I think, really the sadness of all that is sort of in the front of people's minds.